Oh, I put recording because I'll forget. But um uh God, there's so many like teacher artists in this world. Isn't it just the job that we take because like we think it's gonna
Yeah.
give us more time and we think it's gonna give us more money and then it doesn't. Yeah.
Goodness, yep, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there.
Stability it does have though is what's really working for me right now.
Yeah, and it's also like you can hate children, but you can't hate them that much
Yeah,
compared to a coworker.
that's true.
You know, like they could be horrible, but like they're never as bad as a horrible coworker.
Yeah.
So think about it.
And
Think
you
about
can still say, no, you have to listen to me.
Yeah, yeah, but
That
then
doesn't mean they will. Doesn't mean they will, but you can say that.
yeah, but then that power is dangerous because it could go right up to your head.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
we've all had that teacher that like just told us to do stuff because we know they were unhappy at home.
100%. Yeah.
But how are you? How are you feeling? How is life? Where do you feel it's going? I'm very conversational, a little existential, which I feel matches artist energy.
Oh yeah. Then you go for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for meeting us.
Yeah. How do you feel? I mean, like about the new music, where it's going? Like tell me about that whole process, that whole journey.
Yeah, I'm excited to share it. Um, yeah, it feels like a big show and tell, and this band doesn't show and tell very often, so it's yeah. I mean, it's just our second album, and we've been together like for such a long time. So yeah, it just feels really right to be putting the music out in the world. You know, it's like if you have a relationship you really like, and Jess and I have had a relationship for a long time in this band, and you want to share that, with people. Like if you love something, if something's precious to you. So yeah, it feels like we're overdue to share more of this relationship that's been, bubbling under the surface for a long time.
Yeah, it seems like the words, what I found interesting is that you said specifically show and tell, not like we're going with the school theme still, but it felt like when you're with somebody for so long and you're just on the second album, there's a feeling of like we've got to level up. Is that what you're kind of feels like that's what you're saying? Like this album and this dynamic, it's kind of like we've been playing it and now we gotta push it.
Yeah, also just we're like saturated these days with like social media postings and stuff like that. This band has taken the opposite route. I think you'd agree, Jess, of like not oversharing. If there's an opposite word of oversharing, it's this band.
Undersharing, no
Yeah,
sharing.
yeah.
Well,
So
and but like maybe, and I don't think this part was intentional, but now that um we're really hard to find, our band name is really hard to find. So it's like, oh, maybe like that we've taken that a little too far. That part's not, like I said, intentional. We came up with the band name Cast before Spotify was a thing. So we didn't think we would have to like compete for it's it's like that we'd be impossible to find, but we really are. And I don't know, we might have to address that one day. But
Have you?
yeah.
It's really. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think you touched on something that has been on my mind and on so many artists' mind, which is the difficulty of being found in such a saturated world. And then comes this point of, do I start a new TikTok? Like, do I do this entire revamp and hope that the second round will go better, will be more findable, like get a new name, start new socials. Have you contemplated that with the difficulty of finding cast? Oh, I think.
Yeah, we definitely did before. Well, we kind of knew if we were going to change our name, at least the next opportunity to do that was going to be right before this album, which
Mhm.
is already obviously out there under Cast,
Mhm.
about to be released, and everything's all done under Cast. But I feel like we did like Ben and I were talking the other day. We did go to a bunch of like people we really respect in our community, and we're like, should we change our band name to and it wasn't really about what a better band name would be, but just like, should we pursue changing our band name? And no one seemed to think it was a big deal. So we didn't change it, but I don't, hopefully people can just find the music.
Uh,
That's all we really care
I
about.
hate extremely supportive friends.
I know.
Because it's the worst. Like sometimes my friends, I'm friends with some TikTok influencers, and some of them are like really nice, don't worry. And some of them are like, oh, you got to do strategy,
Yeah.
you got to do this. And
Oh,
you're
it's
like,
freezing a little bit.
I want to go with you, but I really am I liking the person who says don't worry. And it's a real measuring.
Yeah, yeah. Like maybe we just heard, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we just heard the one that was like less work.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's something really debilitating about if you have like 2K followers and you're not really going up to go back down to zero.
Yeah, well, see, but anyways, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think all the different platforms are cool. That there's a lot of options these days. You know, when I was coming up in the music scene, there was only one way of doing things, and I've been having this discussion with people that it's cool. Like I see my music students now, I teach music, and I see young musicians having like so many different platforms to share their ideas. But essentially, I think with Cast, it's like a live thing. It's live music, and music also is like it's a phenomenon, sound and vibration. It's to be experienced live, which is also cool. A reminder that you can put out as much content as you want. But we played a show recently, Casted in Vancouver, and it was like, right, this is the exchange that's happening, and this is where we're still getting the most feedback, I think, is from this live exchange, and that's kind of what music has always been, you know, which is interesting
Yeah.
that that's still maybe the best transference is a live exchange.
Because we're talking about how this is all about this relationship between Ben and I.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing. It's a live relationship that essentially is the one that feeds us making more music, is the one that we get from the audience and that we give to the audience. And I really appreciate, Ben, that you circle back to that, because it's easy to get down, like with all the like minutia around actually making and performing music. And then
Yes.
so um that's why I think Ben and I are still a band 12 years later, because with like we just are so understood on that same level in
Yeah.
terms of like what's the priority.
Well, I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think it's sometimes there's so many intentions that go into making music. Like there's the first initial baby intentions, which is I like it. And then it grows into like people need to hear it and people need to come see it. And then it becomes how many people do I want to hear it? How many people do I want to see it? So it's such a weird game because there's always more, there's always another place to go. But if you always think about more and you always think of that other mystical, magical destination, you'll never be happy or appreciative or actually nurturing of what you have.
Yeah, and I feel like Ben and I don't think it's like lost on either of us that like what we love about this is just that feedback, that real time IRL feedback between each other and real other people. And it's almost it sounds cliche and like cheesy now, but it's comforting and it's true.
Think it's cheesy at all. I think we've entered a really weird time in artistry because I know so many artists that don't want to perform. And there's this and I think that's might be the clash between like social media artists and live artists. There is this feeling like maybe I can make it without ever doing a live show, even though concerts are kind of the biggest part of being an artist that sustains his or herself financially. So I do think there's a little bit of a like, I do hear a lot from artists nowadays, particularly rising through social media, like this kind of fear of live performance, fear of that dynamic of exposing yourself, because there's something really safe and intimate about making a great song, have it hit a Spotify playlist, and never having to meet people. Like, I know I'll never be seen, but I'll be heard, you know? So
And then I'll get those sweet, all those royalties.
yeah, yeah, those sweet royalty check. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is a convoluted time to be an artist. It's like the most accessible thing to oddly plateau, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
there's so much, so many avenues, so many ways, so many thoughts. But I did think to myself, maybe you can be cast and crew. Think about that name. Let that
Oh, because like it's about the relationship between like the crew being the audience. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
cast and crew. Well, yeah, I mean, every time because cast is like you're saying, it feels like so accessible that it's almost unfindable. Like that was what your fear is. But cast and crew, there's always the dynamic of the theater cast and the theater crew
Mm,
work together to build this production. And they're never, even though we all say cast and crew, nobody types cast and crew. They
there
type
we go. Ah, I see what you're saying.
so crew.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah.
so you don't have to take out the cast. You just got to add the and crew.
That's true.
There's potential here.
We might get there.
We might have saved the ship
Yeah.
with that idea. Yeah. But what you're talking about, like the life, how do you feel in terms of, especially post-pandemic, have you done live performances? And were they in some, how do you feel they influenced the new work?
Do you want to go for that one then?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we did one show. They're mostly coming up. We have like two release shows coming up,
Yeah.
which will be, yeah, kind of back to back, which will be the majority of the kind of playing for the time being around the release of the album. But yeah, we did a show at the China Cloud in Vancouver recently, and I think that it was an interesting meeting of the two different casts, like cast minus the crew and cast and crew, because old cast looked like two people on a stage,
Yeah.
kind of very intently playing together, and building this like kind of rapport and trying to trick ourselves and maybe the audience that we're a big band, but we're two people. And that's part of why I just love duo and I love playing with Jess. And that's so that was kind of the old cast to me, was this taking up a lot of space emotionally, sonically with two people, and kind of like rising to the challenge of that each time we play.
Yeah.
I like that challenge. But this last gig, so we did a bit of that, but most of the gig was with the first time ever having a band, like having a big band with horn players and stuff. So that to me was just a big experiment, and it was really fun to go micro macro and see like the sound and the yeah, cast and crew. It was really neat, and to be able to have the ability to like accordion, your band like that is kind of very rare. I can't think of like usually the band is the band and that's who you expect to see for the rest of the night. But we had this cool thing where everybody leaves, it's this duo, and then you have this like intimate conversation halfway through your evening, which is, I don't know, I thought it was really fun. What do you think, Jess?
No, totally. It was that last show in Vancouver was definitely experimental in that we invited people on, and we always knew that like this special thing that we had, and not just that we're the only, not like by any means we're the only people doing this, but there was a special thing between the voice and drums songs. Like even when it was just the two of us, the ones that like there's some special moments in that just like really bare responsive drum and vocals dynamic. But instead of like inviting people on just made those more special, even just like a one little thing that we do, whereas like um I don't feel like Ben and I were really happy after that expanded band show because they just bolstered the tunes. They sort of uplifted them rather than like stepping on. And these are really, really competent musicians that we were lucky to play with. Like they're not like stepping all over the duo thing. They're just like uplifting it, adding layers. And we kind of like baby stepped towards that show, because last year we played Vancouver Jazz Fest, and we played another show in the early in the new year with just a bass player. So we kind of like baby stepped towards like a full band thing. And the duo thing still feels special. Yeah.
Did it feel relieving in some ways to have this band that kind of like uplifts you? Because I imagine with a duo, it's about making yourself emotionally bigger to this audience. But when you have the band, there's almost like I can rest a little bit. Or is that just me thinking?
Well, like the musical work of it is just different because it's not like so effortful. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess. But then you're having to just put effort into different things, like you're coordinating with just that many more players, and you're just having to be on in a different kind of way. But honestly, truly, whether no matter what, when we're in rehearsal, Ben, with the horn players and stuff, I truly am only really listening to you mostly. Like it's just so, because I know that then it's fine. Then it's all like, as long as we're locked in, like dynamically, they can be responsive. Like we can all be responsive to each other dynamically, but as long as we're locked in, like I feel like
Yeah.
that.
It means you're kind of like you're as long as the foundation is good, the house is built kind of mentality.
Also,
Yeah.
also part of the foundation is that relationship with the audience, and I would argue that that hasn't changed, like because we're each person on that stage is responsible for that relationship with the audience. And so and I like working for it, you know. I don't want to go on autopilot. I don't want it to be easy, you know. That's not why I play music. It's like, yeah, I want to work for that relationship. I want it to be, because every good relationship is hard fought, you know. There's like no um maybe, I don't know if that's true, but definitely with an audience, right? Maybe some easy, maybe some
Yeah.
relationships you just coast into, but with an audience, like you got to win them over and you got to keep them until the very end. You can't drop it, right? You can't just drop them halfway. Like, so that to me has not changed at all. Like there's just more people doing it on stage, but my capacity to suck people in and to keep them the whole time, that's still very intense. And I need to like do certain things to make that happen, or else it won't happen. You know?
Well,
And even it might even be more work because you have to like it's not novelty to someone's eyes initially, just seeing drum and voice up there. So we still want it to be that we still want it to have that special sauce of the duo thing, even if there's like two horn players and a bass player. So maybe we actually have to work for it even more. Like, yeah, I would not say in either scenario am I like, good. Yeah.
peace over here. Well, it's interesting because like when you think of 12 years together, like what would you say then? Have you been serving the audience lately compared to what you served in the beginning, the first few years, what you served in the middle, the next few years? What do you feel there's something different that you have to give from you beyond the band?
I'd say we're offering, and this is gonna sound so like we just are wiser with our musical. I think the fact that there are more people on the stage with us is that we're just being more thoughtful and spending more time with each individual song. And it's not like on principle, like I think we both just heard it and we both wanted these songs in the case that they are fuller on the album. Not all of them are. Where they are fuller, we just had more time and we were more thoughtful, and Ben and I had more experience arranging songs together.
Yeah.
So I think it just showed like what we're bringing is that like, hey, this is like that first album. We were like, hey, if you've been to one of our shows, cool, here's an album that sounds a lot like that. Like it's very true to the live sound. It's really um not a ton of overdubs. It's pretty much just, and it's great and people liked it. And it was what we wanted to do at that time. But now this is like a gift that we've like, this second album is like we worked really hard on this, like just the sheer hours and like amount of contemplation that went into this one compared to earlier stuff. I'd say it's just like this is how we kind of perfected these songs, like in the way that we see them and in the way that they're presented on the album is kind of what we, does that make sense? Like just like I keep trying to avoid words like maturity and wise because that just makes us sound old, but maybe that's what it is.
I, I, well, I mean, I think they're words that sound old, but I also think they're the words of somebody who's just like easier, like easygoing, like things have become more natural. You're more in self-control of yourself. You're not gonna overthink, you're gonna be thoughtful. And I think that inherently we give those attributes to somebody who's older, but at the same time, I think it's also like if you learn enough from one experience, you could be 20 and just have the soul of a 20,000-year-old person.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like I think it's just it becomes easier. And I think even that word people talk about, but I think that's the truth. It becomes a little, it doesn't have to be so hard to be good. And it doesn't have to be so crazy to get better.
And there's a flip side, I think, to that question. I mean, the question you asked was like, what we offering the audience that's different, or like an offering to the audience. And I can't speak to what the audience gets. You know, that's like for them to say, I guess.
Yeah.
But I can speak as the artist or as the musician delivering. And I say the flip side. I really like your question. I think it's a really interesting question. I would like to give it more thought. But in this moment, I would say the flip side of that question is, what am I offering that's the same? Because I think change is quite easy as an artist. Like, and I've been admiring bands lately, you know, revisiting whatever, like Radiohead being a classic example. I'm like, oh, that band changed a lot over the trajectory, or fill in whatever band that has changed a lot, but stayed really consistent. There's certain things that have stayed really consistent about the delivery of that artistic expression, but yet they've gone through all kinds of different sonic changes and you know, different thematic changes, and I think that's hard. I mean, just to change is easy. Like, you know, I would argue change is like, we could pick up new instruments, we can go electronic all of a sudden, we can, like, you know, there's all kinds of changes you can make, but can you do those while keeping the integrity of the songwriting process intact and the integrity of the relationship intact? And that's what I think I'm offering from my side. I don't know how it's being received, but I would say there's like a consistency that's not necessarily easy to get when you're dealing with changes, a consistency of like, yeah, the integrity of the artistic process. And that's really fun to be able to do that, to be able to not lose that while you are taking these new detours and these new changes.
I agree, and it makes me wonder how much I agree, because like I think it depends on who you are. I think that for some artists it's really hard to change. It's such a personality game, I think, artistry. And I think that for a lot of artists, they put so much of themselves in terms of their history, their story, that changing their story or changing their narrative might not be so easy compared to changing their sound. And I think what makes an artist special is not only a growth in sound, but growth in spirit. Like, take somebody like Taylor Swift, you see the beginning of her career to now, she has 30 million romantic songs, but her perspectives on love, how she feels it, how she gives it, how she receives it, is totally different. And you can hear the changes per era. And I think that's not necessarily easy to actually acquire, because that's not just about growth in sound, but that's growth as a person. Like, how many times so you're an artist for 10 years, how many times can I hear that she left you? After a while, we have to ask, why is she leaving?
Yeah.
You know, like, it's like, why is she leaving? She's always leaving, you know? And
Yeah.
that would be their truth. But if it's your truth for 10 years, after a while, I may not want to follow you, or I'll keep the beginning stuff, but you didn't grow into something new.
Right. Yeah.
So That's what it's funny because you mentioned that. And last night, I don't know if anybody watches Succession, but we have like this whole Succession party, and we were talking about transformation. Like these characters, they grow and they don't. They have a psyche, and they're in a constant cycle of making the same choices look different to them. And I think when you said that, it totally triggered that memory, because I wonder if we just the whole idea, do we grow, do we change, or do we stay the same and just put a different wrap on it, you know?
Well, I think the repeated use of the word integrity is really the main part, is because we did change. Like I already know some people who are like, and you're like, some people who are really very close to us were really hesitant when they heard we were putting like horns on the record, and they were like, but that's like anti-caste to do that. So we already knew that we had the change element covered, kind of. So we knew that for this record, the work was going to be to maintain that integrity, I think. And so therefore, like the time and the consideration and like, yeah, just the thoughtfulness we put into the arrangements and the songs was, and that's why I see your flip side, Ben, is like that was more the work, because the change was the decision to make it a more full sound by adding in other instruments. But so then we had to work to maintain the integrity of like what cast always was. And that comes out when like Ben and I just sit together for like 2 or 3 days, as we're going to do again this August, and just like work things out, play, share ideas, and like go back and forth.
So would you say then that it's not about that you got like yeah, maturity, wisdom, like it's simply you got wise, but it seems like you kind of touched on something that I spoke to with another artist, that it's like you give yourself permission. Like when you start out, there's this concept you're chasing of who you are and what you sound. And then as the years go by, it's about giving yourself permission to veer from that concept, like adding horns,
Yeah.
you know?
But also, it it seemed, yeah, Jess pipe in here too, but it seems to me like this group is a little bit different in other than other groups that I've played with, because
If
yeah.
you don't, there's something like buzzy that came up when you put on the mic.
Oh yeah. What about now?
Yeah, perfect now.
But now that's me muting.
You're good now.
Oh, is it good?
It like left. It was
Oh,
really
Yeah, it was
buzzy.
just like a
And then it
fuzz.
left.
okay. Oh yeah, there's also noises from outside. Yeah, the process of creating, I feel like this idea of giving yourself permission, I feel like we've given ourselves permission from day one, because uh the way we write has always been a little bit different. Like we would start sometimes, like the starting places differed from the beginning. I think like sometimes we actually started with like a drum exercise that I was working on, or like um yeah, starting with the rhythm, then adding lyrics. Sometimes we bring in the lyrics and maybe a chord progression. Sometimes we would just like jam and see where that went. Sometimes we would move to a different instrument. Like in this case, there's yeah, even if you look at the instrumentation of the group over only two albums, it's like there's xylophones, there's guitar, there's just drums, there's like it's quite diverse. So I feel like that's been from day one. We weren't like, cool, this is the formula, let's stick to it. It's like, oh, what's over there, let's try that, like yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that answer because I think every artist that I interview is always different and is always on their own journey, because it's such an intimate, it's also a personal journey, and it's a friendship journey. Like this is about a duo, like you have a clear relationship and connection to each other, and about how that has grown into cast, potentially cast and crew, or anti-cast, which might be a good name too. Um, but I always end my interviews like picking out like little oracles of positivity. Would you like me to pull you some?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Ooh,
Give us that energy.
that good vibe, that good vibe. Okay. Ooh, strong in emotion, passionate love or hate. I find that whale, great worry over nothing. Oh, that's interesting considering we were talking about like the name cast.
That's the final person telling us
Yeah,
just
the whale has said no. Yeah,
Mhm.
vulture, worry that someone or something is against you. It seems like all these cards are saying no need to worry, that any kind of the whole idea is to any worry is such a strong feeling that if you transfer it into love and passion, it's better. It becomes creativity. And it reminds me of somebody who was saying that like every strong emotion, if you just put it somewhere else, it gives its strength into it, like transforming anxiety into creativity, which is kind of why everybody becomes an artist in their own way. They need that piece. So what these cards, let me pull out a few more, are kind of saying is any strong feeling that you have right now, that's negative, with all your might, make it positive. Because I picked out some new cards, and it's caterpillar, a change is coming, gavel, involvement with law, which usually this means like contracts, and coins, money is coming. So it usually means when it that's not us, right? But yeah, usually that means like strong emotions, just transferring anything that's negative into positivity to kind of summon any changes that you desire. It's like manifestation, really. That's basically what they mean. I don't know if anybody believes in manifest.
and like no,
That's
but all
nice.
of that
Thank
is
you.
also like it's nice. It's like survival. It's really just like here's your best road for survival because inevitably these negative things are going to come up. What are you
Mhm.
going to do with them? Like, what are you going to
And
do?
And if there's two things that artists get are fearful of is no money and no change. Because there's so many periods where like those two things can go quiet, you know, where it feels like there's just not a surge of change and money and just a feeling of no sameness. And I think what that's saying is that worry blocks you from believing that change can happen and thus bringing it in or feeling it or seeing it.
I mean, it's cool that the album is called Identities too, because I've been thinking about identity lately, and it's like it's always the go, it's what we always come back to. It's so funny. From since we're born until we die, it's all about like this question of who am I, what's my identity, and then these things you're talking about, these things of prosperity or they're just identities, like I would argue it's not even necessarily real. It's just like you're just in a way you just see yourself as these people, and this is like it's just a manifestation. It's not even necessarily true, but this is so it's kind of cool. Like, identity is like so cliched, but there's a reason why it's cliched. There's a reason why we come back to it constantly in all arts and all philosophy. It's like it's the go-to.
I keep even like we're already thinking about our next album, our third album, and I'm like thinking I'll have these thoughts and I want to write them down and I'm like, oh, I'm so still stuck on this identities theme. And I'm like, well, am I stuck on it or is there just more to go with?
Yeah.
Like maybe we're just gonna make identities too. Like
I mean, somebody said it, I saw a TikTok, somebody said quantum physics, prayer, manifestation rituals, they're all the same. And
yeah.
there's this belief that if you if you are the energy, then you summon the energy. Like everybody responds to what you give them. Like you were kind of saying before. So if you embody it, you become it and it becomes to you because it's like it's responding in some ways.
Yeah, and I think that's again back to that integrity word because obviously I was being very facetious when you pulled up the coin one and I fist pumped because like that's but like Ben and I feel like there are just some questions we don't even have to ask each other um because it's like that integrity is just really understood in all aspects of the um creating the music that goes out into the world
Yeah.
as cast.
Well, usually you also got like involvement with law, like that's usually contracts. So usually when those two cards come together, something contractual. something that involves abundance. But it's all, like you said, it's all about energies, really. And energies, identities, you put different labels, but it's about who you are and what you give and what you receive. Really. Well, this was such a great interview. Thank you so much, because we've been like more than a half an hour and I gotta let you all go to live your life and teach students. But thank you for this interview, and
Yeah, thank you.
whether you are cast and crew or cast or anti-cast or the cast, we could just put a the in front of it. Whatever it is, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much as well. Yeah, this was lovely and very very easy, and not easy in that nice way we were talking about. And I love the way you end it. I like that.
Yay, thank you, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
have a great day.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks for your time.
See you, see you.
Yeah.